What's going on, guys? It's Luke22SV here, back with our first instalment of the Unfulfilled Talents in Formula 1 series, where we take a look at some drivers who haven't quite lived up to their potential in Formula 1, or haven't yet lived up to their potential in Formula 1, and whether it be a wrong decision to move to a different team, or whether they've been in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's many different things that can add up to why a driver hasn't lived up to their potential in Formula 1. And in our first episode, we're going to be taking a look at a driver that I was a big fan of growing up in the mid-2000s watching Formula 1. And that man is Nick HEIDFELD, who came into Formula 1 in the year 2000 with the Prost team before moving on to Sauber in 2001 to 2003, and then moving on to Jordan in 2004, Williams in 2005, then back to BMW Sauber for 2006 to 2009. Wasn't able to get a drive in 2010, so he was a Mercedes reserve driver before replacing Pedro de la Rosa halfway through the 2010 season, and then he, without a drive again going into 2011, he ended up replacing Robert Kubica, who had that horrendous injury in that rally incident, before being replaced himself halfway through the 2011 season at the Lotus Renault team by Bruno Senna, thus ending his Formula 1 career. And today we're going to be discussing his career and how he was the unfulfilled driver that he is in Formula 1, and how he never managed to actually win a race in his all too short career in Formula 1. And today we're going to be going through it. So without further ado, let's get straight on into it. We're going to go through his Formula 1 career, and well, in 1999 Nick won the FIA Formula 3000 Championship and moved straight into Prost for the 2000 season. The Prost team had a fairly decent 1999 season, but again they were midfield sort of team that year. But moving into 2000, HEIDFELD would have hoped that he had joined a fairly decent team, although it wasn't to be. Prost had a terrible 2000 season, and this was Nick HEIDFELD's first season. He was partnered with Jean Alesi for this season. It was a terrible season for the Prost team. They were just slow, the car was terrible. HEIDFELD really struggled, having been a McLaren young driver, driving some McLarens in the previous years whilst he was testing for them. This was probably a difficult car to come in and adjust himself to. Having been in Formula 3000, which we know as Formula 2 nowadays, and well, he was partnered with Jean Alesi, an experienced driver. Those two on two occasions had a couple of incidents during the season, one being in Austria where they both ended up colliding and both ended up going out of the race, but he was fairly matched with his teammate, the experienced Jean Alesi, who was a race winner of course. Well, after 2000 he moved to the Sauber team for the 2001 season, hoping for some better results and hoping for an improvement in form. He was partnered with a rookie, of course we all know Kimi Raikkonen. He was partnered with Kimi Raikkonen, and in fact Nick HEIDFELD achieved his first career podium in the Brazilian Grand Prix of 2001. So already this is a huge step up for him, joining the Sauber team. And Sauber had a very good season in 2001. HEIDFELD had a very good season in 2001 and was outscored Raikkonen, the very highly rated Kimi Raikkonen as well at this point, and which everyone was expecting with Mika Häkkinen to retire at the end of 2001. Everyone was expecting Nick HEIDFELD, having been a McLaren young driver, to take Mika Häkkinen's seat, but in the end it went to Kimi Raikkonen. So HEIDFELD, having been a young McLaren driver, was expecting to get this McLaren seat, and it didn't work out. It went to Kimi Raikkonen, who outscored that season. Even though Raikkonen was a rookie, HEIDFELD only had 1 year of experience in Formula 1, and that was a huge blow for his confidence going into 2002. It must have been a disaster for him, but Raikkonen ended up getting that McLaren seat. Had HEIDFELD got the McLaren seat in 2002, we'd be talking about a different story for his career, I'm sure. He would have definitely got more podiums, and surely he'd have got a few race wins had things panned out, and had he ended up being the one that McLaren chose to sign, and potentially he could have fought for a championship as well, as Raikkonen ended up doing in 2003 and 2005 whilst he was at McLaren. So who knows what would have happened if HEIDFELD was the man who was signed by McLaren. But in 2002 he was then partnered by a new rookie again, in a man who was Felipe Massa, this man also went on to win races for Ferrari, and he ended up outperforming Felipe Massa in 2002, and Felipe Massa wasn't really too strong of a teammate in his first season. He was a fairly wretched first season for Felipe Massa. HEIDFELD being the team leader again, but Sauber weren't as good as they were in 2001. They did fall down the standings a little bit. Heading into 2003, he was partnered by Heinz-Harald Frentzen after he left the Arrows team. And this season, Heinz-Harald Frentzen managed to outscore Nick HEIDFELD, but they were fairly closely matched during the whole season. But again, being outscored by Heinz-Harald Frentzen, it didn't bode well for him. And at the end of 2003, he ended up being dropped by Sauber. And it's a familiar feeling, actually, because HEIDFELD was a race winner at one point as well. So all of his teammates so far had been race winners at some point during their career. HEIDFELD had no race wins in his entire Formula 1 career. He had 13 podiums and actually has the record for the most podiums without a win in his career. And moving on to 2004 then, with struggling to find a drive, he had to look towards the Jordan team, who are struggling, had a terrible 2003 season. They were starting to really slip down the order in the standings. They had a very good car in 1999, almost fighting for the championship. And then after that, as soon as they hit the year 2000, they just slipped down. And towards 2004, they were a backmarker team. So Nick HEIDFELD joined this team, and after being a midfield car for most of his career at Sauber, he was back to fighting at the back of the grid in the 2004 season with Jordan, although he did pick up a few points finishes in the Monaco Grand Prix. He finished 7th, a huge result in a struggling car, and then another 8th in Canada as well. Picking up 3 points was a superb job that season, and definitely got recognised as doing a brilliant job. But moving into 2005, after a season in the backmarker team of Jordan at the time, he wanted to find a more competitive drive, and that's where we move on to 2005, where he had to have a shootout for this seat actually, with Antonio Pizzonia, and he ended up winning the shootout and sealed the drive with Williams. And this is where the story of him and BMW began, their partnership. Of course, Mario Tyson being the man that was BMW, was working with Williams at the time with the BMW engines, and of course the footage in the background is the 2003 Williams, and I thought that would fit perfectly with the video. And he joined the Williams team for the 2005 season. They come off the back of a fairly disappointing 2004 season. So again, wrong place at the wrong time. Williams starting to slip down the order as well. He's been in some fairly good teams now. Prost have had their fair share of good luck as well in the past, and just as soon as he was at Prost had a terrible car. And Sauber have always been a midfield team at this point as well. And Jordan, they had been a front runner before, and now they were backmarkers when he joined him. But now Williams, a team that had been very good in the early 2000s, hit 2005, the new regulations for that season, and Williams built a fairly poor car for their standards, and BMW with one of the best engines at the time. It was just a terrible way to go for the 2005 season after only having one win in the 2004 season. It was just not the way to go for Nick HEIDFELD. He was probably hoping for better things in the 2005 season, but he did manage to succeed in getting his first and only pole position in his career at the European Grand Prix in Nürburgring, and he did get a couple of podiums as well. During that time, he performed very well alongside Mark Webber, who again went to win on many races as well in his career when he joined Red Bull. So again, he's had teammates that have managed to succeed in winning races, whilst HEIDFELD again couldn't win races. It's a familiar pattern starting to emerge as well in his career, and it was just bizarre really that he couldn't succeed in winning any races in his career. He drove for some very good teams in his career as well, so it's just bizarre that he never really managed to win a race. And heading into 2006 then, he had a few races at the end of 2005 where he was suffering some illnesses and missed a race as well. He was injured. And moving on to 2006, Mario Tyson now wanted to basically build his own team, so that's where he took over the Sauber team and BMW Sauber was born, and HEIDFELD was signed by the Sauber team, and BMW, the partnership continued, and this time he was partnered with world champion Jacques Villeneuve for the 2006 season, and the Sauber team were hoping to pump money into, well, the BMW were hoping to pump money into the Sauber team to bring them further up the field, and the 2006 season was the first season with the partnership of BMW taking over the team, so they were still a fairly decent midfield team at this point, and HEIDFELD managed to get a podium in the Hungarian Grand Prix, finishing third, and he ended up outperforming Jacques Villeneuve rather comfortably as well, and then Jacques Villeneuve was replaced by Robert Kubica in the Hungarian Grand Prix after he suffered an injury, and that ended up being permanent as well. So HEIDFELD was now partnered with Robert Kubica, the new rookie that came in, and he was a new hotshot as well at this point. And HEIDFELD had been outperforming all of his drivers, and only been outperformed by Heinz-Harald Frentzen at this point in his career. So we move on to 2007. HEIDFELD and Kubica were now teammates on a permanent basis, and they moving into 2007. BMW had improved the car over 2006. They finished 2006 in 5th in the championship. At the end of 2007 they were actually second, although you could say they were third, but McLaren had all their points removed, so BMW ended up finishing second in 2007. So the car had been improving dramatically. HEIDFELD was the main scorer that season as well, so he outscored Robert Kubica in 2007, the man we all know as the another lost talent as well, another unfulfilled talent for sure in Robert Kubica. But back to Nick HEIDFELD, he did outscore Robert Kubica, the highly rated Robert Kubica, and we now move on to 2008, and this is where Robert Kubica, his teammate, got a win this season. BMW at the start of the season had one of the best cars on the grid, a very quick car actually, and it was very closely matched between the BMW, McLaren and Ferrari, and Kubica ended up getting a pole in Bahrain, and HEIDFELD couldn't really get anywhere near Kubica at the start of the season. Kubica was really on form in 2008, and that's when HEIDFELD needed to be on form, when he finally had a chance to win a race. And he finished second in the 2007 Canadian Grand Prix, and then coming to the 2008 Canadian Grand Prix, he had a perfect opportunity to win the race after Hamilton had collided with Raikkonen in the pit lane. He was on a 1 stop in the race. Kubica was on the 2 stop, and then he ended up, Kubica had the better strategy in the end, and Kubica went on to win. HEIDFELD ended up having to settle for second, and that was a bit of a disappointment for him, although BMW did manage to get their first 1-2 of the season, and their first ever win as a constructor as well, BMW Sauber. So expectations were high, hopes were high after winning the Canadian Grand Prix, getting a 1-2. Could BMW go on to compete for the championship now? Could HEIDFELD perhaps get a win? Could Kubica get more wins? The answer was no. The BMW focused all their development on the 2009 car because of the rule changes that were going into the 2009 season, and BMW ended up falling off the pace, and that was a complete disaster for the BMW team, and it ended up being a bad decision in the end, because moving on to 2009, their 2009 car was not good at all, and it was just a terrible car. HEIDFELD managed to get a podium in the Malaysian Grand Prix, the wet race that ended early, and ended up getting rewarded half points for that. But that was the end of that pretty much. There was no good results coming out of 2009. He outscored Kubica again in 2009, so it was good news for him that he outscored Kubica again in 2 of the 3 seasons they were together. HEIDFELD had actually outscored him 2-1. And so people that said how good Kubica was when he was at BMW probably didn't realise how good HEIDFELD was when he was at BMW. So HEIDFELD was a very talented driver for sure. And then we move on to 2010. He couldn't find a good drive. There was now 24 cars on the grid. There was 12 teams. He ended up settling to become a Mercedes reserve driver for that time towards Nico Rosberg and Schumacher, who were driving for them. And Rosberg and Schumacher were the 2 main drivers. HEIDFELD was a reserve driver. An opportunity did come about though. He rejoined the Sauber team halfway through the season to replace Pedro de la Rosa. Midfield team again. Had a few results in the points for the Sauber team, but towards the end of the season he was dropped for Sergio Perez for the 2011 season, and ended up being Lotus Renault's driver for the 2011 season. He was a reserve driver originally, and Kubica had an injury, his famous rally injury that has basically curtailed his F1 career until this point, and HEIDFELD replaced him. Had a podium as well in the Malaysian Grand Prix second race. He was partnered with Vitaly Petrov, who got a podium as well in the first race, in the opening race in Australia. But in the end, he got replaced. He got sacked halfway through the season. A very unfair sacking in my eyes. He was replaced with Bruno Senna, who didn't really do much for the Lotus Renault team either. So it was a complete mishap. I don't really know why HEIDFELD was sacked by the Lotus Renault team. He was one of the best drivers on the grid in the mid 2000s, and his career just really didn't go the right way. And it was just the wrong place at the wrong time for Nick HEIDFELD. A very good driver, a very quick driver, and a very underrated driver as well. I don't think a lot of people realise how good HEIDFELD actually was in Formula 1. And again, a good driver in Formula E as well. He achieved, I think he's got the record in Formula E as well for the most podiums without a win. And it just goes to show that he's good, but he's not quite there in terms of, he's not got that killer instinct perhaps that's allowed other drivers to get wins. HEIDFELD just hadn't managed to get a win in Formula 1, and hadn't managed to get a win in Formula E either. But a good career though nonetheless. He's got 13 podiums to his name, and he's showed some very good drives. One of the drives that stands out particularly for me was the Belgian Grand Prix of 2008. The last few laps he stuck on those intermediates and charged from about 7th to 2nd in the last couple of laps. He ended up finishing that race in 2nd, and he's just a superb couple of races like that, which just makes him one of the good drivers in the mid 2000s. But unfortunately he's just not one of the greats, and he'll only be remembered as just a good driver really, because he just didn't have the right career at the right car at the right time in his career. But that is going to be the end of that episode. I'd love to hear your feedback, and give me your suggestions as well on other drivers I could do, and hopefully I will have some more up in a fair few days as well. We'll see what other drivers we'll have in store for you, and hopefully we'll see that coming up in your subscription boxes soon. I hope you enjoyed this video today, and let me know ways to improve as well. Just anything you guys want to suggest in the comments, go ahead and throw it at me. I'll always be happy to listen. But apart from that, that's going to be the end of the episode today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I'll see you guys soon. Thank you, and like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.